Hey everybody, my name is Andrew Davis, and you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture. And yes, I am scandalous like an Ashley, and I do want to make that crystal clear for everybody. And before I introduce my guest, I do want to remind everybody that this episode is sponsored by Pocket Jack Comics, who have books like Palace of the Golden Princess and White Lily. And you can find their books at pocketjackcomics.com. And you still might be able to find some of their books in comic shops. But I get it, Diamond is all messed up, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. And I'm not exactly sure where people's books are. But if you can find it in your comic shop, please go pick it up there. Otherwise, go to pocketjackcomics.com and you can pick up some of Preston's books over there. And I think you'll be very pleased because they're beautifully illustrated books. But enough about that, because I have with me comic creator Jon Westhoff. So welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. Is this third time? I forgot.
It's a bunch.
I've been on a couple times.
You've been on a bunch of times. It's always good to have you on. And you got a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, you got Final Heist one-shot crime comic to end them all on Kickstarter. And I know the Kickstarter ended, but you can still pledge late, which we're going to get into. But before we do, why don't you quickly introduce who you are? Because there's people who know who you are. There's people seeing the show for the first time. And you've done a lot of stuff in comics as of lately. I think this is what, your 17th book?
Yeah, I think it's a 17th Kickstarter, but we've had probably 2-3 dozen in my 15-year career now, so I got quite a few under my belt. But I'm Jon Westhoff. I am the writer, publisher, letterer for Part-Time Comics. I have about 15 years of writing and publishing experience in the world of comics. And yeah, our latest book, Final Heist, the crime comic to end all crime comics. Basically, the short pitch is, like a lot of heist movies, a group of ex-cons gets back together, but the twist is that they are meant to infiltrate the world's oldest bank, and will they find more than old money in these old vaults? So it's kind of a twist on the genre that I hope people will like. Yeah, well, and we're confident at least 150 people wanted to read it, so we're doing okay.
So let's talk about it a little bit, because obviously the heist genre is not new. The basic premise of this isn't new, because breaking into stealing shit has been around forever. You know, we have the Italian Job, Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12, Ocean's 8. We don't have to talk about Ocean's 8, everybody. Just because I like Ocean 8 doesn't mean that everybody else has to like it. But then again, I also saw Ocean 8 with somebody who I care deeply about. But anyway, not the point here. But all jokes aside, I mean, what is that like? Because you're writing and you created something that is familiar, but it also has a shift that's interesting. So what is that like? Because I think it's fascinating, because that's the trick, right?
Yeah, and I think if you're going to play around, in genres and tropes, right, you want to play to the familiar, but you, like you said, certain genres, maybe, I don't want to say overdone, but you get your really good ones, and then it's like, what's your in to tell something new in that. And that was my struggle when I was trying to write post-apocalyptic fiction with our series LCS. And now with Final Heist, I kind of had the seed of an idea of blending some genres here together to make it a little bit different than what you might see. Like a lot of things, kind of sat on it, let it kind of fester for a while. And then I was able to team up with crime aficionado Aaron Dowan as my co-writer, and I think that was kind of what helped bring it all together, because it's not a genre that, and not that you have to play to tropes or do anything, you can write how you want to write, but I didn't feel confident in how I was thinking of the story, and I said, you know what, I've never really teamed up with an official co-writer in all these years I've been writing comics. Aaron writes crime fiction very well. Let's bring him in, and kind of maybe two of us together can really get this idea going. And a couple of years ago, we were able to get the script going, and it took us a while to get it to Kickstarter, because we wanted the book to be as close to completely finished as we could get. And we had some artist changes along the way. So we're finally able in this month, 2025, we got funded on Kickstarter. And like you said, we're still accepting pledges, because of course, after Kickstarters, all kinds of things happen, and the funds always help us get more books out there and get our constituents paid.
There's a lot to break down. I mean, you kind of just threw the kitchen sink at me. So there's a lot to break down. I want to take it a little bit slower. So obviously, I mean, you brought in a co-writer or a partner or a writing partner, however you want to call it. I don't know the official way how to call it in the nicest way possible, but what is that like? Because that provides, I guess, benefits to some degree because you have a different perspective. As you know, every writer has a different perspective, and different partners have different perspectives, but also it can create issues or difference of opinions. And so, what is that like? Because it is tricky when you bring in partners, co-writers, or even when people have ownership of a book and equal ownership, because that creates a quagmire, or it could create a potential quagmire, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You think about all those questions, and honestly, I consider myself a pretty easygoing guy. I'm pretty easy to get along with. I thought I would easily enter into the relationship and be like, okay, you write this, or what do you think of this? And honestly, I was a little more protective of the characters than I thought. It took me some warming up to realize, this is a good thing. Let kind of Aaron explore how he wants to explore, give feedback. So I think it was good for me. I went in thinking it would be really easy, and it's still not. They're kind of, in any kind of creative endeavor, we tend to hold on to our creative ideas as kind of our children. And I didn't think I was going to be like that. And then I was kind of like, oh, I don't like what Aaron did there. I don't like, and then, but it was good. It was good to work through live. And I think we put some of that into the book. I actually kind of made some of the characters kind of work through their, their challenges too. Like how, and we didn't have any like outright, like, arguments or anything about it. I just thought it was weird that I was having a reaction that I didn't think I would. And I think it's very healthy. I think everyone should give it a shot. If you haven't, let your babies out there, don't be so precious with your ideas, and give it a try.
So this is fascinating, right? So I mean, this is my child, right? And even my eBay business is my child, and I don't want to share it, right? For a lot of reasons. When you build something from the ground up with nothing and you watch it grow, it's very hard to let your children go. And then also when it starts to become real money, it's even harder because it's like I don't want to give up everything that I'm doing.
Sure.
But I did have a co-host on a podcast for a while, and that thing flowed easy. It was like a 50-50 ownership, and there was like nothing because we both built it from the ground up at the same time. So the idea of it developed where it wasn't my idea and then I brought somebody in. So I find it fascinating because I think, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, you had the idea and then you brought somebody in. And
Mm-hmm.
that might be why people get protective. It's kind of like, and maybe I'm wrong here. I'm just doing it from my angle, but I find it so fascinating because that, like, I've had one partnership on a creative project and it was built with both of us from the start. So I wasn't as protective. And so, like, I just find it fascinating because I had such a different creative endeavor
Well,
experience.
I think it's insightful of you to say. I think you're right. When you've had something you've kind of been sitting on for a while or thinking about, there's more to it, right? And that's difficult to kind of explain to another person. So bringing them in later might have been part of the challenge here, because I definitely treat my other co-creators at my uh, um, other people that I work with. They are definitely co-creators. All the artists I've worked with, they help create the project. I've never had any problem if an artist says this page needs to change or these panels need to move around. I've always been like that with art teams. I don't know why with the writer I had, and I think you're probably right. It was because it wasn't, if we had sat down and come up with it together and kind of threw ideas back and forth, maybe I wouldn't have had that initial reaction. But again, I felt good to be able to let it go and let someone else get in there and then flesh out these characters. And I think that the project is better for it. I think it became more of a fuller character arc,
No,
and I hope.
and then obviously I want to go even further into this because it's not even just bring on a co-writer. You're now also having, Catalyst Studios, which is Aaron's company, and what
Mhm.
Aaron does. And I think it's more than that because obviously there is a business discussion that also goes, and this might be getting more into the weeds, whereas out of creation and more into business. But people on Kickstarter have different philosophies how to run a Kickstarter, how to set up a Kickstarter, where are we going to market it, how are we going to push it out there, what rewards are we going to do? Are we going to do 6 covers or 3 covers? And that's also a whole different ball game because now you're not even talking about the story itself, but you're talking about how are we going to push it out to the world and what are we going to be spending money on with covers, page counts, rewards, tiers, pledges, um, stretch goals, all that stuff. And so that's also a very complicated issue because I would imagine that if he's a co-creator, co-writer, he has a say in how this thing's going to be marketed, especially if he's putting his name on it and his studio's name on it.
Yeah. And maybe we should have brought you in for as a consultant. You're thinking of very insightful things. And I'll be honest, if anybody's watching this, I love to share this kind of stuff. I'm never hesitant. Certain things are personal between your co-creators, but as far as the creation of comics, I want people to learn so they don't go through the same bumps. And I'll be honest, I think I took up too much of that end. I kind of said, well, I was the one who pitched this project to Aaron. So, I'm going to pay the artists out and I'm going to set the budget. And I should have involved Aaron more. You're right. And I don't think he had any issue with it, but I would say, for those, interested in teaming up with another studio or another team, you do want to be more straightforward. Like Andrew's talking about, you want to think about the potential bumps in the road, because that could cause issues down the road. What if someone options Final Heist and Aaron and I only have this handshake deal? We got to be clear about it. So I was very clear with Aaron about one thing. He is definitely, it's 50-50 ownership between us. Deborah obviously as a character designer is involved in that as well. So I feel confident if anything ever came of it, or we needed to reprint the series, or we wanted to do more, like maybe Aaron wants to do a sequel and I don't, I think we could work it out, but I wouldn't recommend doing it like that. I would be more formal about it and just make sure you're clear. Aaron and I have known each other for years, but we've never partnered together, so it's something you need to take seriously.
It's funny, right? I don't want to be in business with my friends, right? I don't. I like my friends. We hang out. We see movies every other week, and we have a great friendship. We play like board games. We watch wrestling together. We drink. We bullshit together. But I said to my friends, I don't want to be in business with you guys at all, and because I want my friendship, right? So like, I don't want to do business with friends. And then when I did my podcast and that thing fell through, it was a 50-50 ownership. So, and what it was is that I said it's 50-50 and we didn't have any sponsors, but I said, if we get, excuse me, but it was a 50-50 ownership because I think that's the only way you can do something. And so, but no real money came out of that podcast that we're doing for about 2 years. But if it did, it was great. But he owns 50% of the content on his channel. I own the other 50%. But I can't do that show without him. But I could do something else in the space. But and so that's what it was. But there was no formal contract. But until real money, if we were pulling in like $70,000 a month, you then get a formal contract.
Yeah, and I think that's the struggles of a lot of comic creators. Even myself, I have a lot of experience. I've been through this with another company, but it's most of us, it's not our expertise, right? We don't think of these questions, and we need to increase our knowledge of this area, because even just with the last company I was with, part of what kind of had it dissolve is that over the 10 years we worked together, my co-owner Bob Gar Ornelas, who brought me into his company, we had different visions, right? So we were very trusting of each other. There's no ill will, but I wanted to bring in income, invest. He was not comfortable with that. He treated it more as like it was still his hobby, and that's okay. I respected that. We worked with a lot of our friends and creators that we knew in the industry, but I felt like that not being clear from jump how we wanted to take the company led it to not do what we wanted it to do, either of us, because we weren't on the same page. We weren't. Not that you have to have everything written out in stone, but if my goal was to put out 5 books a year on Kickstarter, and his was just to produce 1 book and put the logo on it, then that's totally different, because we're going to have to go at it different ways. And in our case, there was funds coming in, and funds needed to be used, and I was putting my personal money into books and not recouping that. That can sour friendships. You're right. So I'm glad that we were able to amicably part ways, but that doesn't always happen.
It's so tricky because there's a lot of stuff that and I'll state what is in between the lines. So when you create an IP, the IP is worth something. I don't know what everybody's IP is worth. That's a tough position to put out. So I don't know what LCS is worth as an IP, but it's worth something. And I just don't know the number off the top of my head. And I also don't know what the free market is going to determine what it's going to be worth, but it's worth something. But also, you have the business side of it where you're making and funding it on Kickstarter, and then it might get reprinted from a company somewhere, and get into comic shops, or you might self-distribute it to comic shops, and then you have income coming from there. And then let's say 15 years from now, it gets optioned for something. Clearly, it's worth money. But that's very complicated when you create IP because you're creating intellectual property that's worth money. I mean, I keep saying, and I'm like providing circular logic here to some degree, but it's the idea that it is hard to figure out what something is worth. And then when you have people who have different visions of what they're trying to achieve, because some people say, look, I want my comic to be optioned and made into a television show. And the book is a pitch in many ways. And it's the cheapest way how to pitch something that then gets optioned. And other people say, I just want to create all this stuff. And then I want to get into conventions and I want to just keep climbing the ladder so that I eventually get a spot at Marvel or DC where I get my book to Image. And people say, I want to write. Or some people say, look, I want to do something completely different where this is my jump to, screenwriting.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very complicated once you get there because everybody has a different vision. And some people say, look, I just want to create comics and this is what I want to do. And I want to just make a living and I want to make $100,000 a year writing comics. Whether that's doable or not is not the point. That's a tough ask.
But it's still conversations you should have when you're, co-creating with people. I do put that in my contracts, whether or not they'll be, co-creator on the project. I do consider my artists, obviously they're doing all character design and everything else. But yeah, I know a lot of people don't even read that part of contracts are offered, and that gets real fuzzy. A lot of places sign you because they want you to sign the deal, and then it says we have 100% licensing rights, and that's why I backed out of the only couple contracts I've ever been offered because they weren't willing to budge on the amount of time they owned it, and you could see where their goal was not aligning with ours. Their goal was not to help us get the book out; it was to vacuum up IP. And then if one of them hits, they make the money because you signed saying they get 100% rights before you see anything,
It's crazy. I mean, somebody sent me a contract to be a guest on their show and they wanted like NILs with it. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I'm not getting paid for this. And I think the person didn't even know what they put in their contract. And so I think they were trying to look sophisticated, but they didn't say, oh, I can use your name, your image, your likeness, your logos. And I'm like, I'm kind of signing. Like, I don't think you want to steal my cute little logo. But at the same time, I kind of read it. I'm like, this freaks me out a little bit. It freaked me out. And then the person was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Like, the person clearly didn't know what they're doing. But at the same time, if somebody sends me a contract, I mean, it's a scary thing. So that's how I view it. But I find this interesting. But I do want to go further into this a little bit as well, because obviously you mentioned something too, because obviously, I mean, the story is that they're stealing something from a bank and they want one last score. I mean, I think the story is pretty straightforward in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to go further into something that I think is also interesting is that obviously you funded on Kickstarter, which is good, and 150 people wanted it. So, and right now the world's all fucked up, for lack of a better word. I'm sorry to say it, everybody. I'll say the elephant in the room. So, what is that like? Because you did fund, which is a good thing, and 150 backers is a good thing as well, especially for something that is technically a one shot. So, what is that like for you? So I think that's also interesting because this isn't going to be a continuation at the moment. It's a one shot and it's a short story. And I think that's fascinating, this whole campaign, because I am noticing a shift in that regard a little bit with comics.
Yeah, I think, when I started Part-Time Comics, I definitely tried to make each issue kind of a fulfilling story. There's certainly some series like Drumsticks of Doom where they run into each other because we know it's a longer series. But having this much experience in the Kickstarter market, you kind of understand a little bit more about what's going to get you backers. A crime comic is always a hard sell. I knew if I made it, if we made it a longer series, that would be an even tougher sell. So I wanted to give people, we wanted to give people a full story, which again comes with its challenges, right? Some people will just say, okay, when it comes out later, I'll get it. Why would I commit to it now? But yeah, it's the year itself is very different for Kickstarter, but this was a unique project too. And again, Aaron and I have talked about, it could be a longer series. There could be, a series like it where it's like a Tales from the Crypt type story where we have different series in this universe or something. But we knew we wanted to kind of get in and get out, see what people want, see how they respond. And then
let me ask you this, because the way I see comics, right? And maybe this is because I'm a Zenescope guy. My favorite stuff from Zenescope is when they do like, the Karis Tales. And they've done like almost like single issues, single stories that are like maybe 48 pages, right? Because then I know that if I'm buying that thing for $8, it's a complete story. I don't need anything before. I don't need anything after. And I know that I don't need any context beyond what's in the book. And I think there's something to be said about that, where, because at this point, there's so much content out there as far as, comics, that I miss stuff. And if you're putting out a book from a series every 6 months, there gets a point where I'm going to miss an issue here and there, because if there's 250 things always on Kickstarter, there's legitly like 40 issues coming out from DC. There's 40 issues coming out from Marvel. There's 40 issues coming out from Dynamite. I mean, it's hard to keep up with comics.
And again, you're so very insightful. That was part of our thinking with this. We're kind of winding down a lot of the longer running series. Some of them, again, we can continue as like one shots or stories in that universe, but it's very difficult to manage one series as an independent creator when you've got a full-time job and everything. And you're right. You just see it over time. You don't get the same backers. People don't come back. Some
this
do.
is about you. You think it's about the creator. What about the consumer here?
But that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Looking at our backers, we know, we've kind of understood a little bit of what you're saying. We understand a little bit more about the market, right? So why would we launch a 60-issue series on Kickstarter right now, knowing what we know? That's going to be a difficult thing for a consumer to commit to. And I'm a buyer too. I back on Kickstarter all the time. I don't want to back your 9-issue series because I know that's going to take 5 years to come out. I just know how that works. It's always 6 months between issues. Even some of the best out there, like Carissa Grant at Worthy Comics, she puts them out every 2 months. She's great. She's a machine. I know I can't do that, right? I do too many projects. I have other things going on. So I want to give people
even to talk about her point and what she puts out. It takes one mess up. It takes one mess up, one bad month, you getting sick 4 weeks, you not having funds, something going wrong in your life, money doesn't come in, less backers, and the whole shit falls apart.
Yep. A book gets stuck on a boat, from somewhere, and next thing you know, it's 4 months late.
Yeah. I mean, and then all of a sudden, shit happens in life. I mean, I would know. I'm not going to get into my personal life, but last 4 weeks have been rather difficult. I got T-boned, for lack of a better word, here in my life. Oh man, we're not going to go too much into it because it's a private issue, but a lot of shit went wrong the last 4 weeks of my life. So shit happens, and I think that's the thing too, is that. But also, and I could be very honest, I've seen people put out a lot of books. And I'm not going to name names, but I mean, there's 10 creators who put out like a book every 3 weeks, right? And you can see the quality of those books has gone down. And I don't mean like the paper, I mean the stories, the art. There's something to be said. If you're putting out a lot of content, the art isn't great. Even with DC and Marvel, if somebody's writing a bunch of books or an artist is working on a bunch of books, there gets a point where the quality goes down. And I mean, I don't want to buy a shit product. That's how I feel. Maybe I'm wrong here, but there gets a point where it's like, if I'm going to give you $20, $30, your book better be fucking good.
Yeah. And I think a lot of creators still don't kind of listen to that and think like a consumer, right? Like you're saying, I respect anyone. I'm a social worker by day. I would never tell anyone don't follow your dreams, don't set your goals. But again, when you're asking people to commit to a long running series and you're not thinking about the questions you're thinking about, like what is my plan if my artist drops out, and do I have somebody who could fill in who's as quality, or what if this one Kickstarter doesn't make as much, do I have enough to invest in the first one, or am I going to have to abandon the series? I want to see things to completion. I see so many indie comics where they get to issue 2 or 3 and you never see the end of it. I mean, that happens in comics in stores too, and that just always irks me. I want to, if I commit to something, I at least want to see it. So I think that people lack the planning too, right? Like you could have a 4-issue arc, and if that does well, then you go to 8 issues, then you go to 12. It doesn't always have to be, that 25-issue story right away.
I'm going to ask you a question. Have you read Gun Honey?
I have not, but I've seen it many times.
So Gun Honey did 4 issues. Then they did a sequel to it, another 4 issues. Then they did a third sequel. So you get your 12 issues out of it. You get your 16 issues, but you're going in 4-issue intervals.
Yeah.
So it's nice because I know it's only 4 issues, right? And let's say I say, man, I really enjoyed those 4 issues. Let me give the next 4 issues a shot. All of a sudden, what happens is that now you're going in 4 issues. So for the company, there's mitigated risk. For me, there's a mitigated risk. And it also allows for a lot of other stuff. A lot of variants come out of this, a lot of fun stuff. And they're probably making more money because they're going in 4-issue arcs, but they're not going in 12-issue arcs. And also they take a break between arcs where they might take 3 months off. And it also helps my bank account, but I don't feel lost, right? So you're releasing 2 arcs a year and you're releasing them monthly. And I don't feel the 3 months is not that big of a deal. But they're also saying, cool, let's say that they're on the 3rd arc and the series flops. You just mitigated risk as a company. And I think it's like Hard Crimes or whatever it is. I forget the company that does it, but there's mitigated risk. There's also mitigated risk for me as a consumer. And, I think it's a win-win for everybody. But that's just how I feel about Gun Honey, because I think it's nice because I'm still getting a lot of story.
No, I think that's a great example. And, and then in your 4th issue, or 5th, you do a recap. Hey, catch up people up, let new readers jump in. We're trying to do that with Drumsticks of Doom. We're doing like the mini series.
Gun Honey is even better. Each 4 issues is like a separate story.
There you go.
I mean, it's the same characters. You get an idea. Maybe there's like 2 paragraphs what happened in the last 4 issues, in there, and that's it. They don't even do like a panel recap. Like, fuck that. You have, hey, this is what happened in the last episode. It's like previously on X-Men, right?
There you go.
It's exactly
just enough to go, oh, I should go back and pick those 4 issues up. Give them just enough. But yeah. I see it over and over again, especially in the indie community. Not enough leaning on peers' experience and saying, that'll be a better model for me. So many things can happen, and you're really asking for people a lot to commit. A 20-issue series could take 10 years to come out, But anyway, that's my philosophy. I love a good one-shot in general. So I said, like you said, sitting in the consumer chair, I said, what would I want to see if I saw this on a comic shop shelf? I would want to walk away with the whole story. I don't want to come back next month and run it down. Some series, it's okay. But for this one, it felt like it's a one-shot.
Again, for me, I like a 4-issue arc series. I think 4 is perfect. Because it's enough invested. It's going to take 2 years at the most to do it if you release every 6 months. And I could commit for 2 years. And also, I know that at some point, 4 issues, it's not that hard to track down. I love a 4-issue series, maybe 6 if it's really good. But even 6 to me, like there was somebody who did a 6-issue series, and I'm not going to name names, but I'm like, this should have been 4 issues, and we could cut out a lot of bullshit in this story. I got
4 to 5 feels good. It gives you a decent trade, once you get there. So I think that's just a smart way to do it.
But that's how I feel. But I'll also say this. You might say for people not to follow their dreams. I will say it very openly. You should not follow your dreams. I'm not saying you shouldn't, let me rephrase. You should follow your dreams after you're stable enough to follow your dreams.
Yeah.
Meaning that you shouldn't go out to Vegas or become an actor and say, I'm going to be the next Bradley Cooper without having acting skills and without having at least some plan or having some money in your back pocket to make it, or some idea what you're going to do in California like waiting tables,
Right.
and you should have some idea. And
Right.
also, sometimes you shouldn't follow your dreams immediately either. Maybe you should follow where money's going. So, like, in which that I'm not saying that sometimes it's better to be a plumber than a painter. Is all I'm gonna
Sure.
say.
I think putting my social work hat back on, what I usually say to people is, let's break down what you're saying. Okay, you want to be the next Taylor Swift, right? That's what we all think. Oh, we want to make all this money. And well, what are you really saying? You want to
John,
make money?
stop telling people my secrets.
You want to make money in the music industry? Is that what you're saying? Or do you want to play music? Because that's a different dream, right? Because if you're playing in your local bars on the weekend, you are playing music. Sometimes it's about setting a realistic goal. It's not giving up on your dream. It's peeling away what is that dream actually about. And that's why I love comics. I tell people this all the time. If I sit down today and I say I want to win an Eisner Award, I want to write Amazing Spider-Man, I'm narrowing my goal down, setting myself up for disappointment, right? If I say I want to be a comic writer, I've done it. I have it on the shelf right here. I've accomplished my goal. And how much better is my life for being able to check that box off and say, what I really wanted to do was write comics. I didn't want to write Amazing Spider-Man. I wanted to create my own series, and I did that. And that's why I love comics.
It's crazy, right? As an interviewer, because we were talking about this, and I think this is so interesting, is that I've interviewed some of the top people in the world, and I've done it in my basement. How many people can say I've interviewed some of the top people in the world sitting in my basement on right after my job, ate my dinner, got off from my job where I work from home, ate my dinner, and I get to go back and I get to watch TV right after I interview one of the top wrestlers in the world, or one of the top, adult superstars in the world, or one of the top comic people in the world. I mean, and I did it in my basement for practically nothing.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to frame it, right? If I want to, like you said, your example is good, but if I want to be the next Michael Jordan and I have no basketball experience, or do I just want to be involved in the world of basketball? Do I want to coach? Do I want to play on weekends? Set goals you can attain. You're going to feel so much better about it. And like you said, be excited about your successes, right? Some people might say, well, Andrew's podcast doesn't get 1 million downloads, so he's not successful. You've just named 10 things that you wanted to, and many people would want to accomplish with setting up a live show. You do it month in and month out. So I think that's a great example.
There are people who have been on my show who will not go on Jimmy Fallon's show. It's crazy. It's crazy. Right. They just will go there, and they don't want to be there because they just don't want to do it. They would rather be wrestling than do it. People like Chris Daniels, Kazarian. I mean, Chris Daniels is the head of talent and relations at AEW. He's called King of the Indies for a reason. There's people like Nixon Noel who was in WWE, and then you look at people like top comic people. I mean, I've had Denny O'Neil on my show. And I've had Chuck Dixon on my show, and I've had, Paul Levitz on my show. Like, all of a sudden, it's like, I mean, I've interviewed like some of the best. And I'm like, I don't care that I got 1 million views. It's there. It's part of my legacy. And I'm 32. So what's the next 30 years going to look like? And that's how I view it too, right? Is that's how I view it.
Some of the best of the best, and now you get the worst of the worst.
But I like interviewing people who are up and coming. I like interviewing the indies, and then I like interviewing like a top superstar. I like the balance. It's because, again, I mean, we could go into philosophical components, but you have an obligation. I feel as an interviewer, I have an obligation to interview the top of the top. But I think it's very cool to come back down and say, cool, this person needs an interview and they're a rising star, or they need a break. And I feel that I have a duty to do it because I would want somebody to do it for me, and people have. So, like, Eddie Kingston's a good example of that. Eddie Kingston is in AEW, and when he was on the rise, he said, cool, I'll go on a bunch of people's podcasts who are significantly below me, and I'm going to elevate their show up because it's an obligation to a degree. And so I think that's the thing about it as well. And I mean, it's a very philosophical component, and it's rooted in Aristotle and other things. In many ways, we're going to get into political philosophy here, but that's how I view it. But other people in comics don't feel that way. It's an issue. It's an issue. And I mean, there's plenty of people who now are much, much further along who won't come back down to shows like mine. And it speaks more about them than it does about me. And I want to be remembered as having character of that nature. And so if I don't get a million views, but I have that character and that attitude, well, you know what it is? I'm fine with that. I sleep fine at night.
That's great. And I feel very much the same way. Again, I joked about writing Spider-Man and winning an Eisner. I have no delusions that will ever happen in my career, but I would rather be remembered as the guy who helped people along the way. So many people helped me starting out. Why wouldn't I want to reach back and say, how can I help you? That's what's going to give me comfort when I finally leave this mortal coil,
Again. When I die, there's going to be a lot of people at my funeral. And that's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to be.
Good, bad, or indifferent, right? They might be tipping over the casket, but that's all right. It'll be action either way.
It's going to be a fucking line, and my family's going to charge $5 to buy. It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Right.
It's going to, and then, oh man, I can't wait. I have to figure out something. I'm not planning to die anytime soon. I want to make that crystal clear, everybody. I want to make that crystal clear before. There are so many things that this could be misinterpreted as. But again, there's going to be a line, right? And there's going to be $5 admission to say goodbye, and then watch as like 20,000 people are going to show up. It's going to be great. It's going to be absolutely wonderful. I'm just going to be smiling from up there or down there, depending on how everyone wants to interpret that.
With a graded basketball card in hand, right?
Exactly. Oh man, my PSA vault's gonna be sick. The amount of stuff that I buy. I don't know. If anybody saw my Facebook post, I almost bought a $2,600 card the other day.
Oh my gosh!
Hey, it was Triple H. It's a 101. It's a PSA graded 10.
I saw.
Oh
yeah,
man.
I never got into the graded. I'm glad for that, but yeah, there's been some times. Like, I'm into Magic the Gathering, and they do so much of that stuff now. It's like, oh gosh, it's so tough to know what to get and what to invest in. It's like,
have you seen a Black Lotus ever graded?
Oh my god, yeah.
Oh my god, when I saw that, I had to leave the store.
Yeah, right.
I just had to leave. It's a very expensive card. So for those who don't know, it's an alpha set, and a Black Lotus graded like PSA 10 from alpha is like an $85,000 card. It's a pretty expensive card. I mean, it's pretty disturbingly expensive. And no, it's not in my budget before anybody asks. I am well aware that I just wanted to look at it. Person's like, do you want to hold it? I'm like, no. Which I said, if I hold this, I'm going to buy it. And the person, the guy who had it in the shop was like, I understand completely. I said, I'm good. I'm good. You keep it there. I'm over here. We're going to be fine. But I digress. I don't want to get into graded cards. I could talk about that for hours. I know way too much. I know way too much, and I have a problem with buying very expensive things, and I have a card problem. Everybody, I mean, there are worse things to be addicted to by far. Much worse things. But I do want to talk about something else that I think is interesting that we mentioned too, which is the late pledge stuff, because that to me. And I have a different opinion than maybe everybody else. Maybe it's because I'm looking in. Is I view it that it takes a Kickstarter and turns it into a Kickstarter shop. So you have your Kickstarter, and then it turns into a shop for however long you want it to be. And I think it's interesting. I don't have a problem with the idea of it, but I think that's what it is. I mean, if we're going to call it what it really is, and I think it's smart because I have a different opinion than maybe everybody else does. Where I think it gives flexibility to get more money with stuff because comics are expensive. I think it also gives the ability for people saying, hey, I missed it. Maybe I didn't have the money when this thing was going to get collected to get involved and jump in on it. And then also, no offense, but shit gets missed just in general. And so now if you have another 30 days, but you don't want to run another 30 days in your campaign, it's kind of a nice balance. And so I'm curious how you feel about that, because I find it to be an interesting addition to Kickstarter.
I think you hit all the key points. I was very interested in it, and I saw why Kickstarter saw the need for it, because they have other programs like Backer Kit and stuff where they're coming behind Kickstarter and they're profiting off of it, right? So I understood that Kickstarter saw a need in their community. They've been very good about that in the last couple of years. They had a changeover in leadership, and they've done some very great changes that they're really listening to the community. They really take their survey and follow up seriously. And this was a big one, because you're right. I think where we were at Kickstarter when I started 15 years ago is very different than now, for a lot of reasons. The number one reason is that it's very hard to find everything right now. You're right. There's just so much noise in the world, and especially on social media, give all that. So to give
I'm
people,
going to stop you to add even more to that. Sorry to interrupt, because it's not just comics.
yeah,
So
right?
I'll give you an example. My dad's a photographer as his hobby. There was a ball joint like plate for his camera on Kickstarter. So think about that, and it's like the ball joint plate. And I'm not going to get into photography exactly, but that's on Kickstarter, and it's not competing with comics. But there's refrigeration things, there's board games, there's everything on Kickstarter. So it's not just comics that is competing, at least for attention on Kickstarter. Now within comics, somebody is probably not a photographer and reading comics or backing both, or if they are, they're the one out of the million. But that's why I just wanted to get that point across too, is that I think that's fascinating. But continue what you were saying. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I think that's a great point. There's a lot of noise in general for many things. Buy this, do this, look at this. And that's kind of our society right now. So to see that need and offer it, because we all know there's the funding goal, and then there's the funding goal. So most of us don't set it exactly at what we need or what we would want to, consider it a fully funded book. So it all helps. But I know a lot of my peers were hesitant because they felt like it would take the urgency, because part of Kickstarter is the excitement, the event. You got to make it an event, and people feel like they're giving into your to support this project and get it off the ground. So there's some trepidation in the community about that. From what I'm hearing, and because I talk to dozens of comic creators every week, it's nothing but a good thing. We might not get a huge flood of backers. Most of us get a handful. But again, it's all helps. We get a ton of pledges that fail afterwards, right? People don't update their credit card information. They don't understand how Kickstarter works, or they find out they don't have the funds, whatever. So it helps on that end too, right? You clean up just a little bit of that money you lost on the back end. Because I think, going back to the first point and the noise that's going on in the world, most of us don't see a lot of direct website traffic, because whether it's our own fault, because we haven't taught our audience to go there regularly, or just people don't go to websites anymore. Kickstarter itself is still a great sales platform where people go all the time to look for stuff. So why not have, like you said, kind of a simplified web store that's just kind of there a couple times a year, and people can kind of just go in there and go, oh, I missed this project, but I can still get it.
Interesting. You bring up a really interesting point about there's a reason why I'm on eBay with my eBay store. eBay is a massive global driving traffic website. And I think people forget that I pay 13% for eBay. That is my customer acquisition cost and my credit card, processing fee cost. And people think 13% is high, but they drive a lot of traffic. So on an item, I could have legitly 5,000 views on a single item. That doesn't cost me a penny to list it, and I get 13% charged on it on the back end upon sale. But I just had a lot of people looking at it. And then you get real data on traffic. And so my eBay store is heavily viewed. I mean,
and I don't think people understand the value right now in the world we live in of having a site like that like Kickstarter could not be replicated. None of these other up and comings will ever get all that they've built over the last 20 years. They just have an audience within them. And eBay is the same way. I actually make more selling our books on eBay than I do through my web store every year, because I just list them and somebody will find it and go, oh, this looks like a cool comic, I'll buy it. Which is sad to say, but that's just the nature of the world. People don't go to Store Envy, where I have my books. They don't go to Etsy as much. You got to find the sites and use them to your advantage.
People give me shit. People give me shit for not having a website and not having like a Shopify store.
Oh, me too.
I don't want it. I'd rather spend, and in the next 60 days I'm going to upgrade my eBay store and spend about like $12-13 so I can list more, get some paid ad going on, ad credit on eBay. But again, I'd rather just be there because
Yeah.
it's worldwide. And then the other thing that eBay provides that I think people forget too is I ship all over the world because eBay has something called an international shipping program.
Right.
And so I shipped a card to the United Emirates. It's
Wow.
one of the coolest things I've ever shipped because I'm like, some kid or adult wanted a UFC card and a rare one that I had. And they're like, yeah, I just want this. And I think it was like Arab fighter was fighting on the poster card that I had. And I had a bunch of them. And the person spent like $30 to have it shipped to them.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but like,
There you go.
it cost me legitly like $4 to ship it to Kentucky, and they handled the international shipping.
Yeah, we do
And
the same through shipping for comics. They package it all together and ship it overseas. So you save a lot. It's the only way we can offer to international shippers. But you're right, eBay has that built in their network, and you don't. There's value in that. Yes, you're paying a higher fee, but could I set up my own international warehouse of shipping? No,
it's crazy. It cost me $4.
Or the other thing too is the expense. Like we used to have a website, right? And we'd pay several $100s a year, and then it was not my specialty, so I had to have somebody else, set it up, and it's a lot that takes away from. So I hope someday that we'll be bringing in the income where I can have, someone put time into that and have a cool website, but why invest in that when it just takes away from, the back end that you need for so many other things.
That's why you pay Kickstarter, what, 10%, right?
Exactly. Otherwise, I just set up my own web store and just direct. If I could do that and click a button, and every time I set a comic for pre-sale, 200 people ordered it, I would do that. I would definitely do that. But that's just not how the world works.
You look at this, and look, I mean, Brian Polito did it with his Lady Death, and he's doing his own thing with that. But even still, it took a long time for him to do that and set that up. How many Kickstarters did he run before he did that? A lot. It took 25 years for him to set that up. That's a long time to set something like that up and to make it work. And nothing against him, and I'm happy he's doing it. But I mean, if you're just starting out, it's going to take you 25 years, maybe 15, because you could copy. And I think in today's society, you could do it in 15 if you really, really hustled. But how many people are going to really be able to hustle that way? It's really hard to do it. And there's all this expenditure, and you also don't know exactly how much it's costing to do all this. But I think it's fascinating. But I do want to go further into this because I am curious, because obviously, how does this affect when you go to printing with it? How does it affect the timeline of the book when you set up a back or late pledge component? Because I find all this fascinating because you still have stuff open, but you don't have everything open. And it's also, I think, available certain things like if you have 3 get drawn into the books and they're all gone, they're not going to be available for a late pledge.
Right. So, and I think the key is offer things that are, unique and good for the live campaign, right? You want to have stuff that people are going to be excited to back. And then you have your basics afterwards. That's how I've been doing it. Because I also, you can set up the late pledge to go a day or, 60 days, I think is the maximum. So set it up to what's realistic, because if you go to print and then you get a bunch of orders, you didn't order enough, you're going to have extended costs. So you got to think about those things in advance. I treat it as, I usually give it like 3 weeks. Like usually if it ends in early in the month, I give it to the end of that month. That's usually about the time where I've got the funds from Kickstarter. I'm sending the book off to print, so then I can kind of know, okay, this is where it stands. And then of course we always print a little extra, but you do want to kind of know relatively where your sales are at so that you can make an accurate order and not overspend either.
I mean, I'll be honest, if I was to ever do it, if I'm printing 150 copies, right, and 100 of those sell, I would just make the other, like I would make 40 copies, available in that way. Because that to me seems the most logical way how to do it, right? So if you have an unlimited print run of cover A's, and you say, cool, I think I'm gonna need 200 of them more, and you get 900 orders. I mean, you have a very different problem. If all of a sudden you have 900 late pledges, you have a good problem. Everybody's gonna have to suck it up, right?
Sure.
But if you have but you should know. But I like when something is limited quantities. So like 150, like Tom Hutchinson is a good example. A lot of his books are 100 copies or 150 copies. So if he does a late pledge and he sold 80 books, he has 70 to play with on the back end for late pledging. And then once those are gone, they're gone. I mean, because that seems how it's perfect for it in many ways.
Yeah, and again, my personal philosophy is if you're going to pledge in that window, you still get any bonuses that were added live. Some people don't do that. They say you got to back live if you want to get, the extra this or that. That's okay too. So, do try to think about, Kickstarter is still seen as an event and a fun thing to engage in. But yeah, if you set a realistic window for the pledges, for the late pledges, I think it's only can be a bonus to me. I think it's been great. It's easy to set up. That's a huge part of it. It's not incredible amount of extra time. It's just a couple extra clicks as you set up the rewards. Do I want this to be a late pledge or not? And how long do I want it to go? And that's great too. A lot of the stuff behind the scenes they've made, much more user friendly. So it's been a cool experiment. Again, we don't get a ton yet, but you always get those handful that, oops, I missed it or, and that's just, that helps. It all helps.
Again, I tried a Kickstarter. It's not for me. It's not my cup of tea. It doesn't work for me. And that's where I'm at. And also, you know what it is? It's just the sector I'm in. It's everybody wants media for free. And so the sector I'm in on podcasting is that it's very much like media today, where people want content with ads. And so that's where I'm at. But it's a tricky sector. But I tried. I'm glad I did my Kickstarter, but the thing was just brutal. Kickstarter is not for me. It's not for me. And I feel weird asking people for money without providing something. Like it feels weird, right? For me. But I digress. This is not about me. But again, I find this fascinating because I haven't ever backed a campaign on a late pledge. So I find it interesting. I'm not against it. I just think it's fascinating from a consumer standpoint. But that's how I feel. But I digress right there. But we are talking about Kickstarter, and obviously the whole world's fucked up, for lack of a better word. In so many ways. A lot of things are happening in this country that are complicated. At the moment, a lot of people have been laid off from their jobs. A lot of companies are restructuring. AI is fascinating. For those who don't know, I am a big proponent of AI. And I will debate anybody and everybody on that, including AI art. And I will all make you lose. So don't worry, the challenge is open. No problem about that. I'm willing to die and defend. You just might not like it, and we might not be friends after that debate, which is fine. Because you'll be a sore loser, and that's what it will be. But joking aside, I mean, how do you feel where comics and Kickstarter is going? Because a lot of shit has changed in the last 6-7 months in the world, between tariffs and other things and economic situations. And I'm curious where you feel, because I have an opinion, and I think it's well known what my opinion is. We're all fucked.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. So it's difficult to be like a small business right now and be like, hey, give me money when things are very challenging, right? There's a lot of reasons for that. Like you said, we won't get into here. It's a long discussion, but I think that it's difficult to plan for the unexpected, but I think relatively you need to be able to see what's in front of yourself and adjust to that, right? So, if you had a plan to put out 10 books this year, you might want to ratchet that back. You might want to see how one goes and then commit to the next, because this is as tumultuous of a time as far as Kickstarter. I'll stick to that genre because of all the factors you said. There's so many challenges. There's huge changes coming all around the world. So it's a bigger challenge than I've had in the 15 years. When I restarted the company 5 years ago, I did not see, things being this way. I mean, who did? Who could have seen it?
It's interesting. Let me ask you this, because I'm curious how you feel. So right now, Bad Girl art books are a nightmare for me to move. In which that I can move them for $5 to $10, and every once in a while you get one that you bought for 20 that trades for 80. But it used to be something like Power Hour, Mount Olympus, some Zenoscope. That stuff used to be really hot, and now it's really tough to move. Stuff like an Ultimate Fallout 4 will always move at a decent price. So it'll always move for $250 to $400 if you have one of those. Those always move. Sometimes they move higher, sometimes they move a little bit lower than that, but they don't usually go below $250, because that's just a solid book. But what I've been finding lately is a lot of cards are just killing it. So my eBay business has actually gone more cards, and especially sports and even stuff that's kind of like Star Wars non-trading card stuff has always is really holding and being protected value. And I think what's going on is that my sister works in marketing, and what she said to me, and it's a great quote, is that when RV sales go down and lipstick sales go up, we're in a rough time
Hmm.
because an RV sale is a luxurious sale, which means that somebody has excess money. And, that doesn't mean lipstick doesn't go down, but lipstick is a very cheap accessory for a woman to make her feel pretty.
No, I think
Where
that's a great, yeah, metaphor for the whole thing.
So
I
that's
think,
where I think we're at, is that,
yeah,
and the reason I'm bringing this up is that somebody might buy a Jaden Daniels rookie card because it's going to maintain and hold its value, and they're not going to go buy a Mount Olympus book. And nothing against Mount Olympus, but those books right now are just so fluctuating. They're cool to look at, they're enjoyable, but they're not
yeah.
maintaining value at the moment.
And you have to be honest with yourself and say, that's the Kickstarter market, right? It's a luxury market. People put their money into it. Like you said, investing, oh, I'm going to get this guy's variant cover and I might be able to trade it later or hold it for value. That's a huge part of the market. So for me, I've definitely seen like books that did 200 backers now do 175. Books that I thought would do 175 now do 150. And that 25% or estimated is a huge hit. So you have to be ready for that. And each of our books, honestly, because a lot of the wheels were in motion earlier, are kind of falling that 20% short of breaking even. And I think people need to be prepared for that because, you used to do 7 covers, right? And people, you get tons of people, all 7 of our variant, and I didn't do that, but all 7 of this variant covers all sold. Now, maybe they're only buying 1 cover. Maybe they're not, buying any of your variant covers. So we've definitely seen the hit. And again, I talk to dozens of people every week. It's the same thing. Everybody's down 15 to 20% where they
See,
were. And
it's
that's a huge hit.
I see this and I see elements of this and I see all these people, and yet I don't see them going on shows. I don't see them promoting. So I have sympathy for the problem, but I also see people not trying to solve it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm very honest about it.
Well,
I've
and
been
I
here.
think that's part of the issue. And again, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but from what I see, even myself, I can't do as many shows. I'm getting older. I'm tired. The world is weighing you down. You're making ends meet. All that stuff also affects you, right? Because if you don't have as much time to do your secondary job, if you're having struggles in your other parts. So I definitely see that amongst myself and my peers. Just the energy to go on shows and cheer each other on is way down in the community in general because shit's a struggle.
I mean, look, I've seen a lot of shit. I've seen a lot of people go crazy. I've seen people fucking snap at me
Yeah.
out of nowhere, not understanding things. And I've
Yeah.
seen just fuckery. And I'm like, I'm here and I'm going to always be here, guys. But, that's where I'm at. But at the same time, I'm also like, I'm selective. There's no doubt about that. Because again, I mean, I've had a tough 4 weeks in my personal life, but I try to make as much time as I possibly can. But even me, I mean, I'll be very honest. I mean, I'm not putting out as much content. I used to put out a lot of micro content, and I've actually taken a step back to build all that out. So I usually
Yeah.
release, and I used to release where I take January off, and then I'd be releasing micro content from past interviews every single day. I haven't released any micro content since December because I'm editing and I'm building up the whole thing. So I have like 400, 500, 600 videos ready to go. So I've actually
Yeah.
taken a step back, not because I'm not working, but because there's no way in hell that I can actually do this the right way if I don't have the tools I need. So I'm actually building the tools I need. So I've taken a step back, which doesn't really help anybody per se, except it keeps me afloat for when I do come back.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you have to say that, right? It's hard because you're living in the moment, but sometimes you have to look ahead and say, what am I seeing? And do I need to take a step back? And I definitely have seen that. Next year is going to be a lot about focusing on finishing Drumsticks of Doom because that's our flagship title. It's our best selling. and I want to get that into a second trade. So I have another trade on the table. So just kind of adjusting, again, not giving up on those dreams, but being realistic to what you're facing and saying, you know what, if I do 5 books a year for the next 5 years, where am I going to be? Or if I refocus, get my, best and most popular book completed, and then kind of have that to shop around, then can I come back to some of these other ideas?
I mean, it's also the idea that for those who don't know, 2 years ago I did 14,000 on eBay, then I did 26 last year, and I'm on track to do 38 to 45,000 in sales this year. So my focus also has shifted, because it's really hard for me to say give up $45,000 in sales so you can do 6 interviews a week. I mean, when you're making no money, and that's a tough ask. That's a tough ask, and I get that I don't charge anybody to be on the show, but at the same time, there is lack of support. If I ask you to share it out on your goddamn Facebook wall and you can't do that,
Right.
I mean, I'm not asking you to fucking spend $50 in Facebook ads, but there gets a point where it's like, I've had people say you could buy the PDF when it comes out. I'm like, no, send me the goddamn fucking PDF for free. You better send me this fucking PDF for free. I've had that. I've had people say,
don't feel shy about asking. You'll always be on the comp list. We appreciate you having time.
That's not where I'm going with this, right? But there's been plenty of people who I've had on my show 12 times. After 12 times, you should be sending me your book for free. You should be sending me a physical copy. There gets a point. I can't
disagree with you.
What would you say?
I can't disagree with you. I still know people who don't send their art team books though, so that's a whole nother story.
It's not illegal. It's just common courtesy, right?
Yeah.
If you know somebody's fucking sticking your neck out for you, there's something called a care package, a professional package, a whatever you want to call it, right? But there gets a point where you gotta, if somebody's taking care of you, you gotta take care of them back, and plenty of people don't do it, and it's a problem. It's a problem. But again, I'm still gonna be here. I treat people how I want to be treated, and it's up to everybody else to treat me how they want.
I always appreciate the conversations. You have a unique perspective on the industry and a lot of honesty in what you say. So I always appreciate, and I appreciate, again, because for me, I've just being honest, the energy level it's been hard to kind of get excited, and you've been patient and kind of just reaching out every once in a while. So I just want to say publicly that I appreciate your interest in talking to me and having these conversations. And even if we don't get 500 post-campaign sales, for me, it's just nice to talk through some of these things, share ideas. It re-energizes me to have, people to share this commiseration with.
Because everybody is scared to talk about business and comics. I had a conversation with somebody about business and comics, and they went ape shit on me. And everybody's scared to talk about it. I'm not. And I think this is the problem. There's nothing wrong. I'm not going to criticize anybody if you fuck up your comic business because you made a bad call. I've been there. It took me 10 years to do $14,000 on eBay. That's fucking bad. That's bad. It took me 10 years to learn that education. So, and I fucked up along the way, and to go from 14,000 to 26 was a massive fuck up for me. It was expensive, and it was a fucking nightmare, because what people don't know is that if you get a certain amount of defects on your account, you're not paying 13%, you're paying 18% with your listings being delisted essentially and not marketing on eBay. I had that for 6 months because that's what it took to get from 14 to 26.
Wow.
So yes, I know every fuck up that happens. And this is why I think people are scared, because there's an element of shame saying, God damn it, from issues 1 to 2, I wound up spending an extra 10 grand to get that done because I made a bunch of mistakes.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to admit that happens.
I do think people are being more honest. I think people are understanding that, and again, you got to find that value. I'm trying to help people not make the same mistakes. I don't have all the answers either. I'm definitely not.
I don't have the answers either. There's no shame in it, is what I'm getting at. And I agree that people are becoming more honest, but I think that people also sometimes don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They also get defensive because I touch on nerves. Not trying to, but I'm also not shying away. I'm not shying away. It's I have an opinion about AI.
There's not too many conversations I'm sure you've shied away from. You have a bluntness to you. I get it, but honesty sometimes hurts too, right? And again, we have to, if we want the books to come out, if our ultimate goal is not to make $1 million or whatever, if you still, there's still a financial element to keep this ball rolling. And if you ignore it, you'll be like I was in our first company, and then you feel like you let everybody down and you lost a lot of money along the way, like you said. And I don't want anybody to get out of comics because they made those mistakes. You should get out of comics because you want to, not because you went broke not listening to what other people did before.
I agree. My objective in life is that every once in a while on Facebook, I tell you exactly what stock to buy, and I provide you what it's going to look like in 30 years if you put $70 away into one stock, and what type of percentage you'll get. And $70, guys, I can make everybody retire with dignity for $70 a week for the next 30 years. With ease. And I can give you a job that'll make you $70 a week if you have a car. It's called driving Uber on a Friday and Saturday night. And you will retire with dignity.
Yeah, especially on St. Patrick's Day. That's the big Uber. You'll make a lot of money.
Is it really? I did not know that.
Yeah, I have 2 coworkers who are like, yeah, we only do it on holidays and stuff, and we make tons of money.
That's fantastic. That is amazing.
And you're doing a service to the community, keeping it safe. You can feel good about yourself.
New Year's is good. It's always good on New Year's. Actually, you know what it is? I would not want to drive on New Year's. No. New Year's night or New Year's Eve, whatever it is, it's not a good day to be on the road. I like staying home that day because I feel safe.
Yeah. I have to agree with you. Yeah, I'm not the young man I once was. I never was a huge party animal, but that's the one day we should all stay home that day and enjoy let me explain why I stay home, right? I know somebody's going to be irresponsible in a car. Absolutely.
If I'm not on the road, I can't get hurt.
That's it. That's what I'm saying.
I go to the liquor store before.
That's
Get a 6-pack. You go 2 or 3 days before, you get a 6-pack. You sit in your house, and
For me, the kids and I, we try to time up Ghostbusters 2 to their, New Year's to drop at the same time as New Year's, and I go to bed. I have a good time.
I'm just saying that unless a car is going to come flying through the air into my house, I don't think I'm going to be in a dangerous situation with a car on New Year's Eve. I mean, it could happen. It could happen.
It could happen.
I'm just saying that the likelihood of that is very whatever. But again, I don't think on it. People get. There's been one time in my 10 or 11 years as an interviewer where I touched upon somebody's nerves so bad they went ape shit on me about honesty. And that person is no longer allowed on my show. Because it was the first time and it was pretty bad. And they went after pretty hard in a private message to me, and they went crazy.
Wow.
And I'm not going to say who it is. They know who they are. And well, there's 10 people who are not allowed on my show.
Really? It's more than I thought.
It's a pretty low list actually. And all 10 of those have different reasons.
Like one a year? I guess that's not so bad. You've been doing it a long time.
I think I've done almost 1,200 interviews, and there are 10 guests who are not allowed on my show anymore.
Wow.
That it takes a lot. There are people who I fundamentally disagree with politically, and we disagree on everything politically, and they're more than welcome to come on my show. There are people who I disagree with their business completely, and there's people who say, "Oh, Andrew, you're wrong. You're going to be broke and you're going to be homeless," and they're perfectly fine to come on my show. You really have to cross a line and do things that are pretty bad, to get banned from my show.
Well, I will try harder in the future to get banned from your show. But
I expect nothing.
I do appreciate you. I hate to cut you short, but I do appreciate you having me on. I think the 3rd or 4th time.
So, but I do want to give you a chance before you have to get out of here to promote yourself. Where can people find the Kickstarter? Where can people bother you, hit you up, find you on social media? Check out some other stuff. Check out your store, eBay, all that fun stuff.
Well, for me, as we mentioned earlier, not having a website right now, I have this free service right here that everyone can use called Linktree that you're all familiar with. You know, there, all you have to do is type in Linktree and Part-Time Comics. Then you can choose how you want to engage with us. Our web store is there. You can follow it. Our YouTube's there. You can follow it. Our social media. Then you can choose how you want me to annoy you on the internet. I am on the internet all the time. I'm one of those people who still enjoys social media for whatever reason. But you choose how you want to engage with us. However, we have all of our most recent campaigns are going to be up there. So again, you can just go to the Linktree. We are Part-Time Comics with an X on all social media. So you can also find us that way. Yeah, Final Heist is still up for late pledges till the end of June. And then the next book is Drumsticks of Doom. And then we're wrapping up Child Possession Services. And maybe we'll harass Andrew to have us on again to talk about that and see where the world's at in a few months.
If I'm still alive, and I've noted that I will be.
That's the second time you said that.
Look, you know what it is? I think I'm going to be fine. I'm always going to be fine. It's just a tough time. This is what alcohol is for. Preferably Jack Daniels. But beyond that, if you actually want to help me out right now, because I'm having a tough time, I do have a lot of social media. Obviously, you can follow me on X, Twitter, Pop Anime Comics. I play around with there. If you want to see me be angry at the Pacers tonight, that's the place to go. Or Oklahoma City. I haven't decided I'm going to be more pissed at tonight. They're not my team, either one of them. So I'm very excited to watch that game. I also have an Instagram, do a lot of cool stuff there. Pop Anime Comics. Facebook, it's Pop Anime Comics again. Cool stuff there. A lot of what I do, though, is I do a lot of stuff on YouTube. I love YouTube posts / community. I have a lot of fun there, put up a lot of stuff. Let's just say that June and July are going to be really fun at 5 o'clock. I have a thing for women in bikinis. So I'm going through a very, very interesting list. And I've been putting up a lot of pictures of women in bikinis at 5 o'clock because people get off from work. And, well, if your day sucked, I know it makes me feel good. So, so that's what's coming out. It's starting really in, I think, the next few days, actually, because we are technically in June, but it's really going to kick off in July nicely. I think it's American. A woman in a bikini is an American thing. The list is very, very good. I've worked really hard to curate this list, everybody. So you're welcome. Is all I'm going to say. But all jokes aside, if you actually do want to support me, because a lot of stuff has happened to me, I'm in an interesting predicament. I'm going to be fine. I do have an eBay store, and I sell a lot of cards. I sell a lot of comics, and I sell a lot of other Pop Funko stuff, and a lot of cool stuff's coming in the next 2 months. So it is Pop Anime Comics Collectibles on eBay, and I got a lot of cool books up there, and I sell things $5, $10, and then I got some expensive stuff in my store as well. And I do carry a lot of interesting cards like this here, where they put a base in the card. So a base from a Major League Baseball game they put in there. I do carry a lot of WNBA stuff like this as well in there. So again, these are limited to 10. This is a limited one. I do have this up in my store right now, which is Angel Reese Draft Night cards. I got some Caitlin Clark stuff as well. And then I do carry some other interesting things as well. Stuff like this and stuff like this in my store and stuff like this as well. And a variety of other stuff as well. So if you're looking for some really cool books, bad girl art, some other stuff, I got all that stuff in there. And then just traditional stuff. And I've been saying it for a while. If you are looking for something, shoot me a message on eBay. And if I have it, I'm more than happy to list it. If I don't have it, I probably know somebody who does, because plenty of my clients are always looking for stuff. And they're like, hey, do you have this book? I'm like, yes, I do. And they're thrilled. So that's how it usually works in my eBay store with a lot of my clients, is that they want one thing. And they're like, yo, by any chance, would you have this one? And I'm like, yep. And that's how I make sales. So, yeah, that's everything that I got going on. And if I don't have it, I know somebody who does. So that's everything with me. Again, Pop Anime Comics. You look me up, you're going to find me, and you're going to find everything I do. So that's everything I got going on. And I'm going to give you the final word.
My final word is be good to each other. It's a tough time for a lot of people out there. So help each other you see struggling along the way, and we'll all try to make it through together.
And I don't think I could have said that any better myself, and that is a wrap.